never beat you at this game?
Because there's just gotta be one thing in this world that I do better than you.
I almost believe you.
But it's true. I mean, you've got the looks and the charm and the wit and all the men. And all I got is a wicked serve and a great overhead smash.
So that's why you insist upon playing tennis twice a week.
Well, it's my way of getting even.
Tell you what I'm gonna do. I'll give you Bobby, Frank, and George. If you teach me that wicked serve.
Why? So you can get even with me?
No, so I can use it on my father. He thinks he's so good at everything. I want to knock him down just one notch.
Okay, it's a deal. I'll race you to the car.
You cheated, Kathy.
Okay, tomorrow?
Yeah, we'll work on the conspiracy.
Okay.
Give me a call.
Night.
Night, hon.
I can think of a better way to start the day.
Tell me.
No, you tell me.
Name was Gail Dobbs. She and a girl named Kathy Deneen were signed up for the court from 9 to 11 p.m. Sometime between 11 and 11:30, she was beaten, raped, and strangled.
Where's this Kathy Deneen?
Ed Clark is picking her up.
Pretty girl.
Yeah. Coroner thinks she put up quite a struggle. There was skin under her fingernails. And 3 of them on her right hand were broken off. Also, there's some fragments of glass on the ground over here. Possibly from a broken pair of glasses. I talked to the guy who runs the courts, and he saw her car was still here when he left at 11:30. It's the only one left in the lot.
Well, didn't he check it out?
Says there's always a car or 2 left in the lot overnight. Girl comes in her car, guy comes in his car, and then...
And they both leave in one car. I know.
Right.
Morning.
Is that the Deneen girl?
She doesn't know anything. She didn't see anything or anybody, and she's on the verge of hysterics.
Hysterics, huh? Why don't I ask her a couple of questions, then you can take her home. Oh, look, why don't you take a couple of men and canvass the neighborhood? Anything that was open all night. Gas station, coffee shop, anything at all. Ask if they saw anyone who looked as though he might have been in a fight. Did you, notify the family?
She's only got her father. He's out of town. They're trying to locate him. Mike, he's a heavyweight. Lots of money.
Okay. Why don't you see the manager, get a list of all the people who played tennis here last night? I think we're going to have to talk to all of them.
Okay.
Now, what route? 83. Does it run all night? Thanks a lot.
Before the neighborhood canvas comes up 0.
What about forensics?
They said they'll have a prescription on the lens in a few hours, but the guy is definitely near sight. We have 3 teams checking out the people on the other courts. Nothing so far.
The Deneen girl said that there was a man watching from the other side of the fence while they were playing tennis last night. Now, he interests me.
You have any ideas?
Yes. There's a bus route, a Route 83, that goes right by those tennis courts. I think we ought to question the drivers who worked that route last night. Yes, come in.
Lieutenant Stahl, I'm George Driscoll, attorney. This is Larry Dobbs.
Well, Mr. Dobbs, I'm very sorry.
Please sit down. I'll be outside.
Yeah.
I want to know, Lieutenant. Everything that happened.
Well, I won't be able to tell you the full detail until I get the medical examiner's report.
Please. If I can ask the question, I can deal with the answer. What happened to my daughter?
Well, your daughter had multiple bruises on the face and head. There was evidence of strangulation.
Was she raped? Oh, my God. I'm sorry. Sorry, Lieutenant. I guess I wasn't as prepared as I thought I was.
I understand.
She was a perfect thing, Lieutenant. Beautiful. Graceful like her mother. Perfect. Do you know who did it?
Not yet, no.
I want whoever did it punished.
We'll find him, I promise you. We've got 5 teams working on it right now.
Lieutenant, if there are any expenses, if there's any money you need to help find him, I have it. I don't care how much it costs. Just let me know and I'll write a check.
No, it won't be necessary.
I just feel that I should help in some way. I feel that there must be something I can do.
Well, there is something you can do. It's not a very pleasant task, but someone has to go down to the morgue and make a positive identification of
Remains?
Why don't you let me take care of that?
No. I'll do it. Well, thank you, Lieutenant. And I would appreciate it if you'd let me know when you have anything. I know it's not procedure.
I'll let you know.
Thank you.
Lieutenant.
Well, what's that?
Names of the bus drivers on Route 83 last night. Ferenga, Holzman, Scott.
Well, what took you so long?
Oh, well, you know, a little bit of this, a little bit of that.
Are you all right, Larry?
I don't believe it. Except that I just looked at her. She's really dead. And that bag of garbage who did it is still alive.
Let it be, Larry.
What are the chances of them ever finding him, George?
Well, it's a good department. Stone is a good cop. I've seen him around over the years.
Must be something I can do.
Larry, the best thing you can do is just go home. Let everybody do their jobs.
You Tom Ferenga?
Yeah. What did I do?
It's not what you did, it's what you might have seen that interests us.
Well, ain't nobody gonna read my rights or nothing? You know, I always wanted somebody to do that. Now, come on, read me my
Wait
rights.
a minute now, you don't have any rights.
I don't have any rights.
No, that's right. You're a witness, not a suspect.
Ah, that's pretty good. Now, look, come on in and have a seat. I only got 11 minutes before I take the thing back out in that jungle again.
Thanks.
Huh?
We just saw the other two. You're the third man that works that Route 83, right?
Yeah, I always double up on my shifts. Overtime. Hey, you know what it costs to put braces on a kid's teeth these days?
Listen, do you know by any chance what time you went by those tennis courts along that route? Was it between 9 and 11?
Yeah, it's twice. It's only an hour and 50-minute route.
Did you notice anyone hanging around the place? Someone that might not belong?
You mean like girl watcher? Well, they always hang around the tennis court. You know, when I'm driving by, sometimes I slow down and take a little peek myself.
Yeah, but last night.
Yeah, well, there was a guy. Well, what is this all about anyway?
Well, a girl was raped and killed. What about this man?
Well, he was a man. He was driving a bread truck, and he was watching the girls on the back court.
So you mentioned the bread truck.
He was parked in the bus zone, and I had to stop in the middle of the street. Parisian bread, I think.
Was he wearing glasses?
Yeah, he was. He's big.
Can you identify him? Give us a full description.
Well, like I said, he was big. He was over 6 foot. He was white. He had on a uniform, and he also had on some very thick horn-rimmed glasses.
Give him a Don. They're only about 15.
You should look that good, Rhoda.
I did when I was 15.
Yeah, well, that's been a few years.
Not that many.
You don't look that bad, Rhoda. Not for the mileage. The usual wear and tear.
Okay, Buster, you've had your fun. Now you better say something nice before I get mad.
Why don't you come over to my place tonight?
Say it.
Just, you and me? With pepperoni pizza?
You better say it.
You're beautiful.
Let's make it my place. It's right here.
I'd like to have a list of everyone who went out with trucks last night.
It's 15. Look, fellas, I'm on my lunch break. I mean, it'll at least take a half hour to get that list.
Not if you hurry.
Well, can't I wait till after lunch?
Look, there's an easy way and there's a hard way. We've been doing it the easy way so far.
All right, all right. Only because I don't need no trouble. But it ain't right.
It never is. Would you get that list, please? Hey, what are you getting so hard-nosed for?
Just following your lead, boss. 6 are black, 3 are over 60, and 1 is 5'2". Of the other 5, these 3 have records. This one here really lays in nice.
Don Wilton. 4 previous, 2 for rape. He beat both cases. Never did any time. You think we can pull a blood type on him?
Well, there's a hospital record in one of the assault charges. That's my next stop.
Okay, I'll take these prints down to the lab for a comparison. Did you get a address on this guy?
Not yet. He moved last week. We should have it by tomorrow.
This the file?
Yeah, looks good. What have you got?
Well, on the glasses, the guy is nearsighted. The best estimate is 40 over 60.
Good. I've got to get these down to the lab.
Where did you get these, Larry?
I bought a file clerk. Are the facts correct?
Well, it's an official record.
They had this guy twice for rape, George. And he's never spent a day in jail. Not one.
It's a difficult charge to prove, Larry. Maybe the women involved refused to go to court and testify.
What about this time? Can they make it stick this time? Can they send this guy to jail?
That depends.
On what?
On the evidence.
Which means there's a chance he could walk away from this one, too. Is that it?
I can't say. That's why we have courts.
I know all about the courts. From them, you get a lot of law and damn little justice.
Larry.
And I want justice, George. I want a full measure of justice for this man.
What you want is vengeance.
Call it whatever you like. The police haven't even picked him up yet. He's still on the streets. Well, if they're not going to do anything about him, I am. I want 5,000, exactly like the proof copy. That picture, nice and clear.
Yes, sir. Offset printing will give you a good gray scale.
I want the whole town papered with these posters when the sun comes up.
Well, that'll take some doing.
I don't care how many people you have to hire or how much you have to pay them. Just get it done.
Are you sure this is legal?
You let me worry about that. If anybody asks you, just tell them you thought it was a practical joke.
Police, don't move.
Wait a minute. I'm the superintendent here.
Where's Don Wilson?
I don't know. I was waiting for him.
With a shotgun?
Well, that's in case he tried anything. A man's got a right to defend himself. And he's dangerous.
Look, Mr.
Zabrocki.
Mr. Zabrocki, you tend to the building. We'll take care of Mr. Wilton, okay?
Do you know where we can find him?
No, I don't. Even if I did, I wouldn't tell you.
Withholding information from the police is a felony. Do you know that?
Why should I tell you guys anything when somebody's willing to pay $1 million for it?
What are you talking about?
Well, I'll tell you what I'm talking about. Here.
Where'd you get this?
Well, they're all over the place. The whole neighborhood is papered with them.
Thanks for the help. Come on.
Hey, you recognize the phone number at the bottom next to ours?
I certainly do. Larry Dobbs. I hope his phones get all jammed.
The switchboard is probably lit up like a Christmas tree.
What I'm afraid of is that somebody will try to shoot him. There's always some cowboy around who thinks he can do it all by himself.
But he's gonna have to shoot fast because if Wilton has seen these, he's on the move and he's gonna make himself hard to find. Just what we needed.
He'll probably start looking for his friends or family.
Man with $1 million on his head doesn't have any friends.
So let's start looking for his family. Give me the keys. I'm going to have a little talk with Dobbs.
Hey, Don. How you doing, brother?
Harry. What happened? You laid off again?
Nah, I just running an errand. Hey, where are you going? Come on, I'll give you a ride.
No. I want to go for a walk. I'll see you later.
Get in that car and do it right now.
What are you doing here?
Shit, you better do what I say now. Get in that car. Don't kill me! Don't kill me! What are you doing? It's him! This is the guy who's worth $1 million! This is the guy who's a killer! Stop him! Stop him!
Now, I'm not implying that the police aren't doing their job, but they can only work efficiently if they have the full cooperation and assistance of the citizens of San Francisco. The reward I offer is an obvious incentive, a cry for help. Whoever gets Wilton gets the money. That's all I have to say.
Mr. Dobbs.
Lieutenant?
Could I talk to you for a minute?
Of course.
Are you responsible for this?
Don't answer that, Larry.
Lieutenant, I told you I want that man caught and punished.
Well, let me tell you, we might have caught him if it hadn't been for these.
I don't want mites. I want results. I want Wilton captured.
You don't want him captured, you want him dead. You want an old-fashioned hanging party.
That's a choice I made optional, Lieutenant. Anyway, it's too late. What's done is done.
Not quite. You're under arrest. Now it's done.
Wait a minute, Stone.
You wait a minute. You'll have your chance when it gets to court.
Well, I want to know on what charge.
Penal Code Section 652. Offering a reward for the capture of a person dead or alive. Now, you do know that's a state crime, don't you?
It's a misdemeanor. I looked it up, George.
Come on, let's go.
I'll be out on bail in an hour.
You know, you probably will. But if anyone takes these things seriously and kills Wilton, I promise you, you'll be right back in again. For complicity. Let's go.
Hey, Rhoda.
What are you doing here?
Saw the poster.
Sure, you can't miss them. Is it true what they say?
No way, baby. I gotta stay hidden now. I gotta straighten out. Rhoda, I need some money.
Money?
Yeah, for a lawyer.
Get back. I'll see you. Boy, why me? Well, what makes me the lucky one, huh?
You are kind of my girl, aren't you?
My purse is inside. I got about $50 I can give you.
Thanks, babe.
Sure. You remember Wilton, don't you?
The guy in the poster? Yeah, only it's too bad I don't know where that weirdo is.
Now, look, if I put him in your hands, will you split the money with me?
You serious?
Just answer me. Will you split?
Yeah, I'll split.
Well, he's in the back in the alley. Hey, look, remember, we split, huh?
Don't let him get away!
What did you find?
Not much. No friends to speak of. His father's dead, but his mother's alive. Used to be a nurse. Only the hospital didn't have a forwarding address for her.
Another dead end?
Well, maybe not. One of the nurses who works there was a friend of the mother's, but she won't be on duty for another 3 hours.
All cars vicinity of Bay and 7. Homicide suspect identified as Donald Wilton. Fled on foot. West on Bay Street. Suspect was wearing leather jacket, woolen stocking cap, dark blue or black.
All right, hold it! Now stay right where you are. Stay right where you are! Hey! Get off of me, you jerk! What are you doing? Hey! Leave him alone! Hey! It's him! Hey!
Mike, he's hurt bad. We need an ambulance. Call an ambulance.
He's mine. He's mine. It was me that caught him.
I want a statement from all these
from the
people.
cab around the corner.
Get that
I
statement
chased him
from
down. I got him down.
Mike, here's his ID. Just take it easy.
I need a doctor. I'm hurt.
We'll take you to the hospital after you're booked.
For what? We caught that killer. We got $1 million coming.
No, I'll tell you what you got. You got the wrong man.
He fits the description.
I'll tell you what else you got. You got yourself criminal charges and maybe even manslaughter if the man dies.
I thought it was him.
Well, you thought wrong. A merchant seaman, just off the boat 2 hours.
We were only trying to help.
I bet you didn't even think of sharing the reward.
How many chances have you had to come up with $1 million? How many? How many times in your life? I'll tell you how many. None. The same as with me. So you give me the smell of that much money. Just the smell of it. And I'm gonna do whatever it takes. And it's not just me either. Every cabbie in this town is looking for that guy. And every bus driver, every pedestrian. Every time a guy's looking out the window, he's looking for that killer. It's not just me. It's everybody.
Maybe. But it's you I'm gonna put in jail. All right, he's all yours. Book him.
I have your name and your address, Mrs. Emily Salter Salter.
Your dog what?
Yeah, I know all about the reward. Thank you so much for your cooperation. She says Wilton is washing the windows of her apartment right now. You know, this belongs in the garbage, but if I don't send a car down there, she's going to be calling back all day long.
I'm sorry I had to put you on the phones, Eddie, but we needed a calm, experienced head.
Oh, I can see it coming all the way from Cincinnati.
You're right. I'm going to ask you to pull another double shift. We're short of manpower. Half the city is chasing the other half around with guns. I tell you, if we don't find Wilton soon, there won't be enough people around to pay the taxes.
Sure, Mike, what the heck? If I can't make the million, at least I can make some overtime. Yellow. Oh, Mike, for you on line 3.
Homicide, Stone.
Mike? Dan. The nurse hasn't seen Wilton's mother in over a year, no address. But she did tell me the mother's been working in a home for senior citizens. She gets her calls from an employment agency.
Which one?
That's a good question.
Have you got a good answer?
Of course. I'm working on it.
Well, keep digging.
Oh, no.
Don't make a move. Now, I want you to get up, and I want you to put your hands over your head.
Sans shoot, Pop.
I said stand up!
Don't shoot. I didn't do nothing.
You did enough. You know, I'm no fool. You're the one they want on that poster. You're worth $5,000 a pound.
There was, another guy. He looks just like me.
Now, I want you to move real slow, and I want you to keep your hands over your head. Now, don't try anything, because I don't want to shoot you. Let's go.
You got him. You got the bankroll.
That's right. I got him in warehouse 4.
Come on, I'll give you a hand with him.
Look, keep your eyes front. I'm going to take him up to my booth, and I'm going to call the cops.
You're crazy. The cops will jump on the reward.
Wait a minute. Well, get over there. Get over there! Cops can't collect rewards. Don't you listen to the radio?
Don't be crazy, Pop. They always got a way to fool you. Look, we'll put him in the car and take him to that Dobbs guy.
No! No, he belongs to me.
Cut it out, will you? There's enough in here for both of us.
Pop! Pop! Hey! Get in here! Help me! Good! Please, help me!
Come on. Come on. You're drawing quite a crowd. Anybody see which way he went?
Well, if they did, they're not saying. The word is out, Wilton shot the watchman.
How did the word get out that fast?
Some repairman that works in the neighborhood. He ran down the street telling everybody Wilton killed an old man.
The watchman dead?
No, he was alive when he left.
How long have they been around?
It was a tie, me and them. I managed to get the gate locked in time, but they'd probably show here with bloodhounds.
Anybody in that posse see which way the repairman went?
You want us to ask?
No, never mind. They wouldn't cooperate anyway. They become their own homicide department. Only they work for Dobbs. And a reward.
defamation of character.
Looks like
Now look, Mr. Wilton.
Well, maybe you
Why don't
better
you
go
call
back
a
to the
lawyer?
bar and ask.
And we don't have anything to do with a reward.
Look,
Yeah.
Charlie.
It's like a merry-go-round in here.
Everybody's going for the gold ring.
No, ma'am. No, ma'am.
Charlie, we can't overlook
Yes, ma'am.
anything.
The money is in escrow, Lieutenant. My name is on that reward poster. I made a promise, and I intend to keep it.
Do you know what your promise has done to this city? Innocent people are being hurt by other innocent people who are blinded by the fact that they could collect $1 million.
I can't change human nature, Lieutenant. I don't want to see people hurt or be put in jail. All I want is the man that killed my daughter, and I'm willing to pay for it. That's where my responsibility ends. What other people do is their own business.
Lieutenant Stone is right, Larry. Call it off. It's gone on far enough.
The reward stays. Was there anything else?
No.
He's not doing this for his daughter. He's doing it for himself. Maybe it's guilt or vengeance or a twisted idea of justice. I don't know. She's just the excuse he gives himself.
Oh, never mind all that. What did you get from the employment agency?
Nothing yet. I'm checking with the DMV to see if she owns or drives a motor vehicle.
Well, keep checking. I've got to talk to the chief. Seems like Mr. Dobbs there, he called them on the phone. More pressure.
Oh, sure. Can you hold on a second? Say, Mike, you're coming back anytime soon. Would you mind bringing me a corned beef on rye, please?
Have any luck?
Yeah, I got Wilton on the phone right now. Yeah, listen, you're the 6th Wilton to call today. You think you can convince me?
You got to help me. Everybody's trying to kill me, man. Look, I can't see nothing.
What about it? The seeing part, I mean. Don't you have glasses?
They're broken.
How did they get broken?
I broke the right lens. There.
Listen, do you know what's wrong with your eyes?
I'm nearsighted. 40/60.
Where are you? We'll send some of our people down to pick you right up.
Wait, what's your name?
Clark, Inspector Edmund Clark.
You come. I got you. Just you.
Listen, I can have someone there in a couple of minutes and it'll be all over.
Just you, okay?
Okay. Where are you?
Hey, the cops can't collect rewards, right?
No, they can't.
You sure?
I'm very sure. Now, where are you?
That's Presidio. That bunker up over the bridge.
Yeah.
Ma'am, I do like cats, yes. Please understand, we do like kittens and cats and all the rest, but not now, lady. I told you 100 times. We're not doing that today.
Tom? Eddie Clark. Yeah, long time no see. Just fine. Look, I'm gonna do you a big favor. You know where Bryant Street headquarters is? Well, meet me outside in 5 minutes. Listen, you want to split $1 million or not? That's right. The guy on the poster.
500,000. Wow. Sure I can do it.
I remember now. You were passing the bunker, you just happened to see him and you grabbed him. As far as I'm concerned, I never got the call. Just take him to the newspapers, they'll love it.
No sweat, I can do it.
There's nothing to do except pick the guy up and give him a ride.
I'll handle it, don't worry.
Wait a minute, what is this?
It's just in case.
You don't need a gun, the guy's trying to surrender.
I heard on television he shot a watchman. He's supposed to be carrying a gun.
I'm telling you, you don't need it.
You know, I'll just feel better with it.
I can't argue with you, I gotta get back.
Eddie! Is Mike still with the chief?
As far as I know. Anything doing?
Tell him that I made a contact with someone who knows the name of the employment agency. But Wilton's mother is remarried and has a new name. I'll call in as soon as I get him. Anything coming in on the phones?
headaches, and crease marks on the seat of my pants. I had to stretch my legs or I'd go stir crazy.
Better get used to it. Another year and that's all you'll have to do. That and collect checks.
11 months and 4 days to be exact. And then sweet retirement.
Clark?
You ready to go?
Tired of running, no place to hide.
Don't try anything.
You're not a cop.
Come on, give me the gun.
You're one of those headhunters out for a reward.
Don't make any wrong moves or I'll shoot.
What happened to the cop? What's his name?
Give me the gun.
Sure. Might as well get it over with.
Louis, get line 4, will you? Johnson, just tell him you can't make a citizen's arrest on the phone, and then tell him to go back to bed.
No, soon. Yeah, I'll be home soon, Helen. Yeah. Yeah, I'm sorry, too. What? No, don't bother, honey. I'm not very hungry. Okay.
Do you want to talk to me? You don't have to, you know.
Yeah, Mike, I want to talk.
I just came from the hospital.
He's dead, isn't he?
He died 20 minutes ago.
I tried to tell him not to take a gun. He was an old friend, Mike. He and his wife, Betty, and Helen and I used to play poker once a month. Till they started having kids. It was the money, Mike. It was so much money. So what happens now?
You're through.
All these years on the force, over 24 of them, I get hungry just once. And it's all blown.
With Wilton still loose, you're the only man I can blame for it.
No breaks?
Would you give a man a break?
I would like to go home for a little while. See Helen. Am I under arrest?
You can go home and pull it all together. And then come back down here and turn yourself into the desk.
Why me? Why couldn't somebody else have answered that phone?
Homicide, Stone.
What took you so long?
Well, I usually shave and have a cup of coffee before I leave the house in the morning. What have you got?
I located the mother's address. She's living under the name of Thompson over in North Beach.
Well, why didn't you say so? I could have skipped the shave.
Hope you skipped the coffee.
I'll survive, but you won't. If you offer me any of that carrot juice you drink. God. What's the address?
Let's see.
Don, it's 8 o'clock. Donnie? You said to get you up at 8 o'clock. Are you all right?
Yeah, I'm fine. Fix me something to eat, will you?
I've got some eggs. How do you want them?
Anyway, I'm starving.
Is it true?
What's that?
What they said on TV about the killings?
I think I like those eggs sunny side up.
Oh, Donnie, why are you always in trouble?
Mom, it's a lie. They gotta blame somebody, so they're blaming it on me.
Then why don't you go to the police and talk to them?
I tried that. I called them. They tried to kill me. I gotta get out of the country. You gotta help me.
I don't know how to get you out of the country.
You got any money? That's all it takes is money.
Maybe $30.
Well, get it. I need your car keys, Sue.
I need the car, Donnie, to get to work.
I'm asking you to save my life. You're telling me about going to work? Give me the keys. Come on. I gotta get dressed. Well, don't stand there staring at me like I'm some sort of bug.
Who is it?
Police, Mrs. Thompson.
I'm coming.
I'd like to talk to you for a minute.
About what?
Oh, I'm sure you know what.
My son? He's not here. Oh my God!
Call for help.
Available units to respond to a foot chase at Spalding and Curson. The suspect is Donald Wilton, wanted for murder.
Drop that gun! What's with you? He's still alive. Call an ambulance. Hey,
what are you messing with me for? That's the guy in the poster. I stopped him for you.
Now, who gave you the license to kill? Huh?
All right, but I just won $1 million. You can't take that away from me.
No, I can't. But if he lives, you're going to spend most of it on lawyers, and if he dies, you might not be around to enjoy it. Well, come on, book him.
Crazy people.
No, just people. Like Dobbs said, human nature. Sometimes it goes sour. And when it does, that's when they need us the most. Come on, let's get out of here.
Lieutenant, let's let bygones be bygones. No hard feelings, okay? Well, it worked out, didn't it? It's over.
No. It's not over for a sailor who's in the hospital, or for the people who put him there who might go to jail. There's a watchman on the critical list. Tom Springer is dead, and Ed Clark is through as a cop after 24 years of honest service. Can it be over for them? And the man who shot Wilton, who's up for charges, maybe even manslaughter.
I didn't tell him to pull the trigger. It was his choice.
That's right. It was their greed, you're right. But who baited the hook?
Wilton deserves to die.
No, he deserves a trial.
A trial? That's legal mumbo-jumbo.
Probably sounds that way until it's you that's on trial, then it begins to sound pretty good.
Look, Mr. Dobbs, if I were you, I'd get the best medical care for Wilton that your money can buy.
What are you talking about?
If he dies, the DA's going to charge you with first-degree murder.
According to the penal code, all I did was commit a misdemeanor.
I'll see you in court.
I tried to warn you, Larry.
Don't warn me, just defend me.
You think the DA can make the murder charge stick?
Well, to tell you the truth, Daniel, I don't think he knows. But he's going to try, and we're going to help.
The fog rolled in from the bay like a living thing, swallowing the streetlights one by one as if San Francisco itself were deciding which secrets it was willing to reveal tonight. And Inspector Mike Stone felt the familiar tightening in his chest that came whenever the city grew quiet in that particular way. The way it did right before something ugly surfaced, because this city never slept peacefully. It only paused to catch its breath. And tonight it was breathing slow and shallow as Stone. Leaned against his unmarked car on Guerrero Street, collar turned up, eyes fixed on the second-floor window where a single light burned like a warning flare. The kind criminals never noticed, but cops learned to read early. Because light meant presence and presence meant risk. And risk was the currency of the streets he had walked for over a decade. Long enough to know that San Francisco didn't kill you with noise, it killed you with patience, with beauty, with the illusion that nothing bad could happen in a place this picturesque. And that illusion was exactly what had gotten Eddie Rourke dead 6 hours ago with a bullet behind his left ear, execution style. No witnesses willing to talk, and no shortage of people pretending they hadn't heard a thing. Even though gunshots echoed differently in these narrow streets, sharper, more personal, like the city itself was pointing a finger and saying, "Remember this." Stone pushed off the car when he heard footsteps behind him and didn't bother turning around because he knew that stride, a little too eager, a little too loud, youth still clinging to it like cologne. You always stand like you're waiting for the city to confess. Inspector Steve Heller said as he came up beside him, notebook already in hand, eyes darting everywhere at once, still trying to absorb every inch of the city as if one day it might suddenly make sense. Stone allowed himself the ghost of a smile. "I'm not waiting for the city, kid. I'm waiting for people to stop lying to themselves." Heller nodded like he understood, but didn't, not really, not yet, because understanding came later, after the paperwork and the funerals and the nights you lay awake replaying conversations that seemed harmless at the time. Stone gestured toward the lit window. "That's where Rourke was last seen alive." Heller flipped a page. "Apartment belongs to a Maria Alvarez, age 32 waitress. No priors, says Rourke came by to talk, left around 10, Stone." Exhaled slowly, fog curling from his mouth. And she didn't hear the gunshot, Heller hesitated. She says she was in the shower. Stone looked up at the window again, imagining the steam, the water, the perfect cover for a lie that had probably seemed reasonable when it formed. Funny how water makes everyone deaf, he said, then started toward the building, the entrance door groaning as it opened. As if protesting the intrusion, the hallway smelled like old paint and boiled cabbage and Stone felt the familiar sensation of stepping into a story that had already been written, his job not to change it, but to read it correctly. Alvarez's apartment was small, clean, too clean for a place where someone had died hours earlier. Stone noticed the absence immediately. No blood, no chaos, just a faint metallic scent clinging stubbornly to the air like guilt that refused to wash away. Maria Alvarez sat rigidly on the couch, hands folded in her lap, eyes red but dry, the kind of crying that had already happened off stage. Stone took in the details the way he always did, the way she angled her body away from the window, the way her foot tapped in a nervous rhythm that didn't match her breathing. "Ms. Alvarez," Stone said gently, "mind if we go over it again?" She nodded too quickly, and Stone knew this wasn't just fear. This was calculation. She told the story again. Rourke showed up unannounced, said he needed help. Wouldn't explain, they argued. He left. She showered. She heard nothing. Stone listened without interrupting, letting the silence do the work when she finished, because silence had a way of making people fill it with the truth if you gave them enough room. Eddie Rourke wasn't the kind of guy who asked for help without explaining why, Stone said finally. Her eyes flickered, just for a second, but it was enough. You knew he was in trouble, he continued. You just didn't know how bad. Her shoulders slumped a fraction. I didn't kill him, she said, and Stone believed her, not because she sounded sincere, but because the fear in her voice wasn't the fear of someone who'd pulled a trigger. It was the fear of someone who'd opened a door they couldn't close. We're not saying you did, Heller added quickly, trying to be reassuring. Stone shot him a look but let it pass. But someone did, and they did it because Eddie knew something. Stone leaned closer, lowering his voice. If you don't tell us what that was, whoever killed him might decide you. Know too much. That did it. The tapping foot stopped. Maria swallowed hard. He said he was dead either way, she whispered, dead or alive. The words hung in the air like a verdict. Stone felt a chill that had nothing to do with the fog. Dead or alive for who? He asked. She shook her head, tears finally spilling. I don't know, he wouldn't say, just that if he talked to the police he'd be dead. And if he didn't he'd be dead. And he laughed like it was a joke. Stone straightened. Exchanging a glance with Heller, this wasn't just a street hit. This was leverage, pressure, something bigger. Did he mention any names? Stone asked. Maria hesitated, then nodded. He said something about a file, she said. Something old, something the city buried. Stone's jaw tightened. Old files were dangerous. They had a way of staying buried for a reason, often because too many people had dirt on their hands. Where is this file? He asked. Maria shook her head again. He didn't have it. He said if anything happened to him, someone would find it. Stone felt the familiar frustration rise, the sense of chasing smoke, but smoke meant fire somewhere, and he intended to find it outside. The fog had thickened, the street now a muted corridor of shadows and muffled sound. Stone and Heller walked in silence for a moment, each lost in their own thoughts, until Heller spoke. Dead or alive sounds like a threat, Stone nodded, or a promise. They reached the car just as Stone's radio crackled to life. Another body, this one down by the docks. Unidentified male, same caliber, same execution style. Stone closed his eyes briefly. 2 points made a line, and lines led places whether you liked the destination or not. At the docks the smell of salt and diesel mixed with death. The body lay sprawled near a stack of crates, face obscured. Stone knelt, careful, professional, turning the head just enough to confirm what he already suspected. That's not Rourke, Heller said, stating the obvious. Stone shook his head. No, but it's connected. The man's pockets were empty except for a matchbook, damp but legible. A bar on Columbus Avenue. Stone pocketed it, feeling the weight of inevitability settle in. Bars were where secrets went to drink, and Columbus Avenue had a long memory later. As the city lights reflected off the wet pavement like fractured stars, Stone sat alone in his apartment. Tie loosened, jacket draped over a chair, the matchbook on the table in front of him. He thought about Eddie Rourke's laugh, the way Maria had described it, the kind of laugh you used when you knew the ending and didn't like it. Stone had heard that laugh before, years ago, back when he was still learning that the line between dead and alive in this city was thinner than anyone wanted to admit. He reached for the phone, dialing a number he hadn't called in a long time, someone who knew about old files and buried truths. Someone who understood that in San Francisco, survival was often temporary and justice was always expensive. The line rang, and Stone stared out the window at the fog, already knowing that whatever came next wouldn't let him stay on the sidelines, because when a man was dead no matter what he chose, the only real question left was how many others would follow him into the dark before the truth finally surfaced. Morning in San Francisco arrived without ceremony, the fog retreating just enough to reveal the outlines of buildings like a city reluctantly admitting it existed, and Inspector Mike Stone felt the weight of unfinished business press down on him before his first cup of coffee even cooled. Because sleep had been shallow and crowded with fragments of Eddie Rourke's laugh, Maria Alvarez's trembling voice, and that phrase that refused to stay quiet, dead or alive, words that sounded less like a threat the more he rolled them around in his head, and more like a set of rules written by someone who believed they were untouchable. Stone parked near Columbus Avenue just after 8, the street already awake with delivery trucks, shopkeepers raising metal grates, tourists blinking at maps as if the city might rearrange itself to accommodate them. The bar from the matchbook sat between a bakery and a travel agency, its sign faded, its windows dark even in daylight, the kind of place that survived by never advertising what it really offered. Stone pushed through the door, the smell of stale beer and disinfectant clashing unpleasantly. A man behind the bar looked up with practiced disinterest. "We're closed," he said. Stone held up his badge. "Not to me." The man's eyes narrowed just enough to signal recognition, not of Stone personally, but of what he represented, a complication. "Name's Frankie," the bartender said, wiping an already clean glass. "What can I do for you?" Stone glanced around, a couple of old-timers hunched over coffee, pretending not to listen. "You can tell me about the man who died last night." Frankie's hand paused mid-wipe, just for a beat, then resumed. "Lot of men die in this city," he said. Stone nodded. "This one carried your matchbook," Frankie sighed, setting the glass down. "He was here," he admitted. "Didn't say much, didn't drink much either, just sat, watched." Stone leaned an elbow on the bar. "Watch who?" Frankie shrugged. "Anyone who came in wearing a suit." Stone's instincts sharpened. "Why suits?" Frankie hesitated, then leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Because this place used to be popular with city men, back when certain deals were made over cheap whiskey and no one asked for receipts." Stone felt the pieces shift, old files, buried truths. "Did Eddie Rourke come in too?" Frankie shook his head. "Not last night, but yeah, I knew him." Stone's eyes locked onto Frankie's. "From where?" Frankie smiled humorlessly. "From before he cleaned himself up, before he decided he wanted to be useful." That word landed heavy. Useful to whom was the real question. "What was he useful for?" Stone asked. Frankie glanced at the old-timers, then back. "He remembered things," he said simply. "Things people paid good money to forget." Stone straightened, the bar suddenly feeling too small. "Who was paying him?" Frankie shook his head. "I don't know names. I know types. Lawyers who didn't want their clients connected to certain nights, businessmen who didn't want their pictures in certain rooms, cops who didn't want their careers ending early." Stone's jaw tightened at that. He'd known this case would circle back toward his own house eventually. It always did. "And the man who died last night?" Stone asked. "Was he paying or collecting?" Frankie swallowed. "Collecting." Stone thanked him, leaving the bar with more questions than answers, which was becoming a pattern. Back at the precinct, Steve Heller was already waiting, excitement and anxiety warring on his face. "We ID'd the doc victim," he said. "Name's Louis Kincaid, former city clerk, resigned 12 years ago amid a minor scandal." Stone raised an eyebrow. "Minor scandals don't usually end with bullets," Heller nodded. "Exactly, and there's more." He handed Stone a thin folder. "Kincaid was connected to a zoning case from the late 50s. Waterfront redevelopment, permits that vanished, properties that changed hands overnight." Stone flipped through, names blurring together until one jumped out, a councilman long retired but still influential. "This is the file Eddie was talking about," Stone murmured. Heller frowned. "You think Rourke had access to this?" Stone shook his head. "Not access memory, he was around back then, small-time runner, saw things no one thought worth recording." Heller leaned against a desk. "So why now?" Stone considered that. "Why after all these years did the past suddenly matter enough to kill over?" "Because someone decided the past wasn't past anymore," Stone said. "And they were right." The phone rang, cutting through the murmur of the squad room. A patrol officer on the line. Maria Alvarez was missing, her apartment empty, signs of a struggle minimal but present. Stone felt a familiar surge of anger, sharp and focused. "They took her," Heller said quietly. Stone nodded. "Because she knew Eddie came to her." He grabbed his coat, already moving. The city outside seemed brighter now. Cruelly indifferent, as if daring him to keep up, Maria's apartment was sealed, the silence inside louder than before. Stone stood where she'd sat, imagining fear turning into panic, someone knocking, promising answers or safety, lies delivered calmly, efficiently. This wasn't random violence. It was controlled, professional. Dead or alive, Heller muttered. They're making sure no one chooses alive. Stone's mind raced ahead. If Maria was leverage, then someone wanted something, and that something was the file or what it represented. The list of names that could still topple empires. Stone thought of the councilmen, of others still walking free, respected, powerful, men who would do anything to keep the past buried, including rewriting the present. Stone made a call to an old contact, a reporter who owed him favors and thrived on stories everyone else was afraid to print. I need you to look into the waterfront deals from 58 to 62, Stone said. Quietly, the reporter laughed. Nothing about that era is quiet. Stone hung up, knowing time was tightening like a noose. Hours later, as evening fell, Stone received another call, anonymous this time, a distorted voice. You're looking in the wrong direction, the voice said. Am I? Stone replied calmly. The file isn't paper, the voice continued. It's a person. The line went dead. Stone stared at the phone. A person, someone alive. Someone who carried the truth. Someone who could be silenced. Stone felt the pieces snap into alignment. Eddie Rourke hadn't been the file. Neither was Maria. They were conduits, distractions. The Rayall file was someone else entirely. Someone still breathing, for now. And whoever that was, they were running out of time. Stone found Heller sharing the call. So who's left? Heller asked. Who else was there? Stone closed his eyes, searching his memory, faces long forgotten, names buried under years of cases, until one surfaced, a name he hadn't spoken in over a decade, a former detective who'd vanished quietly into retirement after testifying in a corruption inquiry that never quite reached its target. Jack Doyle, Stone said. Heller blinked. I thought he was dead. Stone shook his head. Not dead, just forgotten, and that makes him dangerous. They drove north, toward a quiet neighborhood where the city softened its edges, where retired men gardened and pretended the world no longer needed them. Doyle's house sat dark, the lawn overgrown. Stone felt dread coil in his stomach as they approached. The door was unlocked. Inside, the air was stale, untouched. A life paused, then ended. They found Doyle in the study, alive but shaken, hands bound, eyes wild. They were here, he rasped. They said I had a choice. Stone knelt beside him, cutting the bindings. Dead or alive? Doyle nodded weakly. I chose alive. Sirens wailed in the distance, but Stone knew this wasn't over. Choosing alive only meant you lived long enough to make the next choice. And in this city, choices always came with a price. Jack Doyle's hands still trembled even after the ropes were cut, the skin around his wrists raw and angry, and Mike Stone noticed how the old detective kept flexing his fingers, as if reassuring himself they still belonged to him, that he hadn't crossed some invisible line where pain turned permanent. The study smelled of dust and cold coffee, a room abandoned too quickly for someone who claimed to be retired. And Stone understood immediately that Doyle had never really stopped being a cop. He'd just learned how to disappear in plain sight. They didn't take anything, Doyle said hoarsely as Stone helped him into a chair. They just wanted me to understand. Heller hovered near the doorway, alert, eyes scanning shelves heavy with law books and yellowed case files. Understand what? Stone asked. Doyle laughed weakly, a sound without humor. That the past isn't done collecting. Stone leaned forward, lowering his voice, the way he did when he needed honesty more than comfort. Jack, Eddie Rourke is dead. Louis Kincaid is dead. Maria Alvarez is missing. And whoever did this thinks you're the last loose end. I need you to stop protecting ghosts and tell me what really happened back then. Doyle closed his eyes, and for a moment Stone thought he might refuse, might retreat into that familiar wall of silence men built when they realized speaking would only cost them more. But then Doyle opened his eyes again, and something inside them had shifted, resignation mixing with relief. We weren't chasing criminals, Doyle said. We were cleaning up messes. The words landed heavy. Stone didn't interrupt, letting Doyle's confession find its own rhythm. Waterfront redevelopment was a gold mine, Doyle continued. Property values, shipping contracts, union leverage, everyone wanted a piece, but the permits were dirty, forged signatures, bribes paid in cash and favors. And when a clerk like Kincaid started asking questions, they didn't fire him, they promoted him, moved him sideways until he learned to stop asking. Heller frowned. And Eddie Rourke, he asked. Doyle nodded. Runner, courier, saw more than he understood, until he understood too much. Stone felt anger stir, old and familiar. Why didn't you bring it all down? He asked quietly. Doyle met his gaze. Because the men involved didn't lose, he said. They adapted, they buried the evidence. They sacrificed a few expendable names, and they made sure anyone who pushed too hard never worked again. Stone thought of careers ended quietly, of files reassigned, of leads that evaporated overnight. So you became the file, Stone said. Doyle gave a thin smile. I remembered everything, dates, names, who paid who and who signed off, he swallowed. They couldn't kill me back then without drawing attention, so they waited, let time do the work. Heller shook his head. Then why now? Doyle looked away. Because someone made a mistake. Stone felt the tension tighten. Who? Doyle exhaled slowly. A young lawyer, ambitious, thought he'd impress the wrong people by digging up old zoning cases. He didn't know the history, just saw irregularities, started asking for documents that were supposed to be lost. Stone connected the dots instantly. And that woke them up, Doyle nodded. They panicked, started checking who else might talk. Eddie tried to sell his memories, Kincaid tried to run, Maria was collateral, and me. He gestured weakly around the room. I was insurance. Outside, the quiet neighborhood felt suddenly exposed, every passing car a potential threat. Stone's radio crackled softly, no updates, which worried him more than bad news. We need to get you somewhere safe, Heller said, already thinking ahead. Doyle laughed again, bitter this time. There is no safe, not for me. Stone stood, resolve settling in. There is if we end this. Doyle studied him, searching for doubt, finding none. Then you'll need names. Doyle said. Not rumors, not theories, names that still matter. Stone nodded. That's the only currency they understand. Doyle struggled to his feet, moving toward a locked drawer in his desk, hands shaking as he opened it. Inside were not papers but photographs, old, grainy, faces frozen mid-smile at charity events and ribbon cuttings. Men who had built reputations on respectability. They're still around, Doyle said, tapping one photo. Different titles, same power. Stone recognized several immediately, a retired councilman, a shipping magnate, a former police commissioner whose name still carried weight in the department. Stone felt something cold settle in his gut. This wasn't just a case, it was a reckoning. If we move on them, Heller said cautiously, they'll know it's you, Doyle nodded. They already do. Sirens wailed in the distance again, closer this time. Stone's phone rang, a call he'd been dreading, the reporter, voice tight with adrenaline. You were right, she said. Someone's been scrubbing records, but I found something, a trust fund set up in the 60s, beneficiaries tied to waterfront properties, and guess who just tried to access it? Stone closed his eyes. Maria Alvarez, the reporter confirmed. Or someone using her identity. Stone felt the urgency spike. Where? He asked, scribbling the address she gave him, a financial office downtown. Stone turned to Heller. They didn't take her to kill her, he said. They took her to unlock something. Doyle sank back into his chair, exhausted. They'll kill her once they're done. Stone grabbed his coat, the familiar sense of momentum carrying him forward. Downtown traffic was a blur, horns and brakes and impatient drivers unaware that history was colliding with the present just a few blocks away. Stone parked half a block from the office, scanning the building, plain, anonymous, perfect for transactions that didn't want attention. Inside, the air was cool and sterile. Stone flashed his badge at the receptionist, eyes sweeping the room until he spotted Maria, seated stiffly beside a man in a tailored suit whose smile never reached his eyes. Stone approached calmly, the way you did when you didn't want to spook prey. Maria, he said, relief flickering across her face before fear reclaimed it. The man stood smoothly. There's been a misunderstanding, he said. Stone's gaze hardened. The only misunderstanding is thinking this ends well for you. The man's smile faded, tension crackling in the space between them. Inspector Stone, he said quietly. You're out of your depth. Stone didn't flinch. I've been drowning in this city a long time, he replied. Heller appeared at his side, backup finally arriving. The man raised his hands slowly, calculating. Dead or alive, he murmured, almost amused. Stone felt a surge of anger. Not your choice anymore. The arrest was clean, efficient, but Stone knew better than to celebrate. The man in the suit was a messenger, not the architect, back at the precinct. Maria was safe for now, shaken but alive. Stone checked on Doyle, now under protective custody, though the word felt hollow. The city didn't protect, it negotiated. Night fell again, fog returning like an old accomplice. Stone stood by a window, looking out at the lights. Heller joined him. We're pushing uphill, Heller said. Hard. Stone nodded. But uphill's the only direction left. He thought of the photos, of the men who believed time had absolved them, of Eddie Rourke laughing because he'd known the truth too late. They think the rules are dead or alive, Stone said quietly, but they forgot a third option. Heller looked at him, curious. What's that? Stone's reflection stared back at him in the glass, older, tired, unyielding, exposed, he said, and for the first time since the case began, Stone felt something close to certainty, not that they would win, but that the truth, once disturbed, refused to stay buried, no matter how powerful the hands trying to hold it down. The morning after the arrest arrived sharp and brittle, the kind of clarity that followed a storm and made every sound feel accusatory, and Mike Stone knew before he reached the precinct that the city had already begun to push back, because power never sat still when challenged. It shifted, it leaned, it pressed until something weaker gave way. And as he walked through the doors, he felt eyes on him that weren't there yesterday. Glances that lingered a second too long, conversations that paused. And resumed when he passed, the subtle choreography of institutions closing ranks. Heller met him by the coffee machine with a look that mixed resolve and unease. Internal Affairs called, he said quietly. They want to talk about your involvement with the Alvarez arrest. Stone nodded, unsurprised. They always do when the wrong people start feeling nervous, he replied. The squad room buzzed with a low hum of activity that felt performative, busy for the sake of being seen. Stone headed for his desk, already buried under files that hadn't been there last night, reassignments, memos, distractions dressed up as priorities. A hand touched his arm, and he turned to see Lieutenant McKay, a career man with a smile that never reached his eyes. Mike, McKay said pleasantly. Word is you're stirring up ghosts. Stone met his gaze evenly. Ghosts stir themselves when the ground shifts. McKay chuckled softly. Careful, he said. The city doesn't like being reminded of what it used to be. Stone watched him walk away, knowing that was as close to a warning as he'd get. Maria Alvarez was brought in mid-morning for a formal statement, flanked by an officer who looked more like a guard than protection. Her eyes darted nervously, the confidence she'd borrowed from survival already wearing thin. Stone sat across from her in the interview room, the glass reflecting both of them, two people caught in a story neither had chosen. They told me it was money Eddie left me, Maria said, voice shaking. They said it was my only chance to disappear. Stone leaned forward. And you didn't, she laughed bitterly. Disappear where, Inspector, when the city already knows your name? Stone felt the weight of that truth settle. Anonymity was a luxury long gone for her. Do you know who the man was? He asked. Maria nodded. They called him Mr. Hale, she said. He said if I cooperated, I'd live. Stone wrote the name down, even as he knew it was likely another mask. Heller watched through the glass, jaw tight later, as Maria was escorted out. Stone received confirmation from the reporter that Hale was a fixer, a professional intermediary whose job was to make problems smaller, quieter, permanent, and that meant the real pressure hadn't even started yet. By afternoon, the city councilman's office issued a statement condemning the investigation as a reckless reopening of settled matters. Stone read it twice, noting the language, the careful framing, the emphasis on stability and, moving forward, phrases that always appeared when someone was afraid of looking back. Heller dropped into the chair opposite him. They're circling, he said. Stone nodded. Then we tighten the net, he replied, but tightening nets required leverage, and leverage required proof, not memories and not confessions extracted under duress. Proof that could survive daylight. Stone visited Jack Doyle in the safe house that evening, a modest place guarded by uniformed officers who looked bored enough to miss something important. Doyle sat at the small kitchen table, a cup of tea untouched in front of him. They won't stop, Doyle said without preamble. Stone pulled up a chair. Neither will I. Doyle studied him, searching for bravado, finding only fatigue and stubbornness. You need more than my word, Doyle continued. You need something they can't spin. Stone nodded. We're working on it. Doyle shook his head. No, he said. You're reacting. They're anticipating. He pushed the tea aside and stood, moving toward a closet. Stone tensed instinctively, but Doyle's movements were slow, deliberate. He reached behind a stack of coats and pulled out a metal lockbox, old, scratched, heavier than it looked. I kept one thing, Doyle said. One thing I swore I'd never use. He set it on the table, hands lingering as if letting go hurt. Inside was a reel-to-reel tape recorder and several labeled spools. Dates scrawled in a careful hand. Stone's breath caught. What is this? He asked. Doyle met his eyes. Meetings, he said. I recorded them, just in case. Stone felt a surge of cautious hope. Recordings could change everything, could pierce through denials and half-truths. Why didn't you destroy them? Stone asked. Doyle smiled faintly. Because I always believed the city might need to hear itself one day. They listened to a tape there in the kitchen, the sound grainy but unmistakable, voices laughing, clinking glasses, discussing permits and payments with casual certainty, names spoken openly, authority assumed. Stone felt anger rise, but beneath it a grim satisfaction. This was it, this was substance. If we release this, Heller said later when Stone briefed him, they'll come down hard. Stone nodded. They already are, he replied. The decision was made quickly, quietly, a controlled leak to the reporter, a copy secured with the district attorney's office. The kind of move that forced the issue into the open where it couldn't be smothered. Night fell again, fog thick as guilt, and Stone drove home feeling the city's pulse quicken. His phone rang just as he parked, an unknown number. You've crossed a line, a voice said, calm, measured, the voice of someone used to being obeyed. Stone leaned against the car. Lines exist so someone knows when they've been stepped on, he replied. The voice sighed. You think exposure is victory. It said, you forget how many people prefer darkness. Stone smiled humorlessly. Darkness doesn't testify. He said. The line went dead. Within hours the story broke. Headlines cautious but pointed. Whispers turning into questions, questions into demands. By morning the tapes were everywhere, radio hosts dissecting them, citizens calling in outraged, men in suits scrambling. The city woke up angry, and anger was a force no fixer could easily redirect. At the precinct, chaos reigned, reporters camped outside. Internal Affairs suspended its inquiry into Stone pending review, a small victory wrapped in bureaucracy. Heller looked at him with something like awe. You just shook the whole city, he said. Stone shook his head. The city shook itself, he replied, but even as he said it, he knew the cost was coming. Mid-afternoon news came that Hale had been found dead in a motel room. Apparent suicide, a neat ending to a messy problem. Stone stared at the report, anger flaring. Dead or alive, he muttered. They always prefer dead. Heller clenched his fists. We're still standing, he said. Stone nodded, but standing wasn't the same as safe. That night, Stone visited Maria one last time before she was moved out of state under a new identity. Will it end? She asked quietly. Stone considered the question, the city, the tapes, the men who would fall, and the ones who would adapt. It will change, he said honestly. Endings are rare here, she nodded, accepting what she could as he left. Stone felt the exhaustion settle deep in his bones, but beneath it something steadier, a sense that for once the past hadn't won by default. That choosing alive didn't always mean choosing silence. The city outside hummed, restless, wounded, still beautiful, and Stone knew the story wasn't finished yet, because power never surrendered all at once. It fractured, it lashed out, and somewhere in that fracture lay the next choice, the next test, the next question that would decide who stayed alive and who paid the price for it. The city did not calm down after the tapes went public. It vibrated, like a struck nerve that refused to stop sending signals. And Mike Stone felt that vibration everywhere he went, in the way patrol officers straightened when he passed, in the way certain doors no longer opened as easily, in the way some people suddenly remembered his name, while others pretended they had never known it. The newsroom lights burned late into the night. Radio voices sharpened with outrage, and San Francisco began. Doing what it always did when forced to look at itself, it argued, loudly, passionately, defensively, as if truth were a foreign object lodged somewhere vital. The morning briefing at the precinct was tense, clipped. Captain Daniels spoke carefully, every sentence weighed, every directive framed as neutral procedure. But Stone could hear the pressure behind it, the calls from City Hall, the quiet visits from men who didn't put requests on paper. Heller stood beside him, silent but alert, absorbing the lesson that no academy could teach, that justice was never just a matter of evidence but of endurance. We're limiting proactive measures, Daniels said, eyes flicking briefly toward Stone. Until things stabilize, Stone nodded, understanding the translation perfectly. Slow down, stop digging, let the storm pass. But storms like this didn't pass, they redefined landscapes. Stone returned to his desk to find a thin envelope waiting. No return address. Inside was a single photograph, recent, grainy, taken from a distance. It showed Jack Doyle standing in the doorway of the safe house, a uniformed officer beside him. Unaware, Stone felt his jaw tighten. The message was clear. Protection was a suggestion, not a guarantee. He folded the photo carefully, slipped it into his pocket, and stood. We need to move Doyle, he told Heller. Now. Heller nodded without question. Trust forged in shared risk. They drove without sirens, blending into traffic. Stone's senses sharpened. Every car that lingered too long a potential threat. The safe house was quiet when they arrived. Too quiet. Stone's hand hovered near his weapon as he knocked. The door opened slowly. Doyle's lined face creased with weary relief when he saw them. I was wondering how long it would take, Doyle said. Stone ushered him inside. They're watching, Stone said bluntly. Doyle smiled thinly. They always were, he replied, packing a small bag with movements that spoke of long familiarity. With leaving quickly, you know, Doyle said as they prepared to go. For years I thought keeping quiet was the same as being careful. Stone met his gaze. And now, Doyle shrugged. Now I know it was just being patient for the wrong side. They moved Doyle to a federal facility outside the city, layers of jurisdiction creating the illusion of safety. As they left, Heller exhaled, tension bleeding out slowly. You think that holds? He asked. Stone stared at the road ahead, fog beginning to creep back in. Nothing holds forever, he said. Back at the precinct, the fallout accelerated, subpoenas issued, resignations announced in carefully worded statements that never admitted guilt. The former police commissioner's name dominated headlines, his defenders loud, his supporters indignant. Stone watched it unfold with a detached anger, because for every man forced into the light, there were others already repositioning, learning, adapting. The reporter called him that afternoon voice, buzzing with equal parts triumph and fear. They're fighting back, she said. Smear campaigns, planted stories, they're calling you reckless. Stone almost laughed. They always do, he replied. Means they're running out of better words. But even as he said it, he felt the strain building, because reputations were fragile things, and once cracked, they let in doubt like water through stone. Late that night, Stone returned home to find his apartment door ajar, the lock untouched but defeated. He moved inside slowly, every sense alert. The lights were on, furniture undisturbed. But something was wrong. The air felt rearranged. He found it in the bedroom. His old case files spread neatly across the bed, not taken, just displayed, a message written in paper and memory. We know who you are. Stone gathered the files methodically, anger steady now, cold, the kind that didn't burn out quickly. His phone rang as he finished. An unknown number again. You should have stopped, the same calm voice said. Stone leaned against the dresser. You should have retired, he replied. The voice chuckled softly. This city eats idealists, it said. Stone's reflection stared back at him, eyes tired but clear. I'm not an idealist, he said. I'm a witness. Silence followed. Then the line went dead. The next morning brought worse news. The district attorney's office announced a review of all evidence tied to the tapes, citing concerns about legality and chain of custody. Stone read the statement twice, feeling the familiar frustration rise. They're trying to bury it again, Heller said, slamming a file onto his desk. Stone nodded. Different dirt, same hole, he replied. But even as the machinery of delay engaged, something else happened. Citizens organized. Protests formed near City Hall. Signs held aloft bearing names pulled from the tapes, anger turning collective, visible. Stone stood on the edge of one such gathering after his shift, watching faces young and old, voices raised, the city speaking back to itself. A woman approached him, recognizing him despite his attempt at anonymity. Thank you, she said simply. Stone didn't know how to respond. Gratitude was rare in this line of work, and dangerous if you let it mean too much. It's not done, he said instead. She nodded. But it started, she replied, and walked away, leaving Stone with an unfamiliar sensation, not victory, but momentum. That night, Heller joined him for a late drink. Not at the Columbus Avenue bar, but somewhere quieter. You ever think about leaving? Heller asked, nursing his glass. Stone considered the question, thought of other cities, other streets. Every cop thinks about it, he said. The ones who stay are the ones who know they won't outrun themselves. Heller smiled faintly. I'm glad you stayed. Stone looked at the condensation on his glass. Ask me again when this is over, he replied. The following days blurred together. Hearings announced, then postponed. Witnesses recanting, others stepping forward unexpectedly. The fixer's death ruled a suicide officially. Despite inconsistencies that gnawed at Stone, Maria's relocation confirmed, a new life starting somewhere far from fog and waterfront deals. And through it all, the phrase dead or alive lost some of its power, because exposure had introduced a new risk, one that bullets couldn't silence easily, but power was patient, and it chose its moment carefully. Stone learned this when he received the call about Eddie Rourke's sister, a woman who'd lived quietly in the Central Valley, suddenly arrested on dubious charges, pressure applied sideways, never directly. Stone slammed the phone down, fury flaring. They're punishing ghosts now, he told Heller. They're reminding us what leverage looks like. Heller clenched his jaw. So what do we do? Stone stared out the window at the city skyline, lights flickering like nervous thoughts. We make it too loud to ignore, he said. The next move was risky, But Stone had learned that safety was often just inertia with a nicer name. He arranged a public testimony, convincing Jack Doyle to speak before a civilian oversight committee, cameras rolling, the city watching. Doyle's voice shook at first, then steadied, names spoken again, stories retold under oath. Stone watched from the back of the room, feeling the weight of every word, because this was irreversible. When it ended, applause broke out, quickly silenced by order, but the sound lingered in Stone's ears that night. As he walked to his car, a man stepped out of the shadows, older, impeccably dressed, eyes sharp. "Inspector Stone," he said. Stone's hand moved instinctively toward his weapon. The man raised a placating hand. "No theatrics," he said calmly. "I just wanted to see the face of the man who reminded us that memory is dangerous." Stone met his gaze. "You could have chosen differently," Stone said. The man smiled sadly. "So could you," he replied. "Dead or alive. Was never about survival, Inspector. It was about control." He stepped back into the shadows, leaving Stone alone with the truth of it. Control was slipping, not gone, but contested, and that was enough to keep the fight alive. Stone drove home under a clearing sky, stars faint but present, thinking of Eddie Rourke, of Maria, of Doyle, of all the lives bent by decisions made in rooms that smelled of smoke and certainty. And he understood then that the city would never be clean, never be innocent, but it could be honest, occasionally painfully honest, and sometimes that was the closest thing to justice anyone ever got. The first week after Jack Doyle's testimony felt like the city was holding its breath. A collective pause stretched thin across neighborhoods that had learned to live with corruption the way you lived with weather, complaining about it while quietly adapting. And Mike Stone sensed the shift not in headlines, but in the quieter places, the sudden willingness of clerks to return calls. The way a patrol sergeant stopped him in the hallway just to say be careful and meant it, the way certain names vanished from invitation lists and charity boards as if absence itself could be a form of penance. But power never disappeared. It redistributed, and redistribution always created friction. Stone sat through a closed-door meeting with the district attorney's office where words like prosecutorial discretion and evidentiary thresholds floated around the room like incense meant to sanctify delay. Stone listened, patient, knowing patience was the only weapon that didn't dull with use. "We're building something that lasts," the assistant DA said, careful not to meet his eyes. Stone nodded. "So am I," he replied, though he knew they meant different things afterward. Heller caught up with him outside, jaw tight. "They're slow walking it," he said. Stone shrugged. "They're trying to survive it." Survival was the theme now, not just for witnesses and cops, but for institutions suddenly aware of their own fragility. The city council announced an independent review committee, names carefully selected to appear neutral. Stone read the list and recognized 2 as reliable and 1 as compromised, which felt about right. Maria sent a short note through channels that confirmed she was safe, adjusting, learning a new name. Stone folded it and placed it in his wallet. A reminder that some choices did create distance from the past, even if they didn't erase it. Then the call came that fractured the pause. A uniformed officer found dead in a Tenderloin alley, apparent robbery gone wrong, except Stone saw the report and felt the familiar chill. The officer had been assigned to Doyle's former detail years ago, peripheral, forgettable, exactly the kind of person who knew enough to be useful and not enough to be protected. Stone stood over the body under the flicker of a streetlight that hummed like an insect, the smell of rain and garbage thick in the air. "This isn't random," Heller said quietly. Stone nodded. "It's punctuation." Someone was reminding them that sentences could still be ended abruptly. The investigation drew resistance immediately, evidence misplaced, timelines blurred. Stone felt the old gravity return, heavier now because the stakes had been raised, and raising stakes always drew gamblers with deeper pockets. The reporter called again, voice taut. "They're leaking that the tapes were doctored," she said. Anonymous experts planted doubts. Stone exhaled slowly. "Truth has a shorter half-life when people are tired," he said. Fatigue was setting in, not just for him but for the city. Outrage required energy, and energy was finite. The opposition knew this. They were waiting it out. Stone countered by doing the one thing he could control. He kept showing up. He kept asking questions. He kept writing reports that were too detailed to dismiss easily. Late one evening, as fog crept back into the streets like a habit the city couldn't quit, Stone met with an old judge he trusted, retired sharp, immune to favors now that he had nothing left to gain. "They're trying to isolate you," the judge said over coffee. "Make you the story instead of the facts." Stone nodded. "I've worn worse," he replied. The judge smiled sadly. Be careful you don't become useful to them in the wrong way. Stone understood. Martyrs were convenient. They absorbed attention while systems adjusted quietly. On his way home, Stone noticed a car following him. Not close enough to be obvious, not far enough to be accidental. He took 3 turns then. For the car mirrored him, Stone pulled over abruptly. The car rolled past, slowing just enough for him to see the driver, a young man, nervous, eyes wide, hired, disposable. Stone watched him disappear, making a note to himself that surveillance was meant as pressure, not an immediate threat. Yet pressure accumulated. It always did. Heller felt it too, his jokes thinning, his sleep erratic. "They're leaning on my family," Heller admitted one night, voice low. Stone felt anger flare. "That stops," he said, not as a promise but as an intention. They arranged protection, subtle, informal, the kind that relied on favors and trust rather than orders, because official channels were porous. A hearing date was set at last. Subpoenas issued for men who had believed themselves untouchable. Stone prepared meticulously, reviewing timelines, cross-referencing names, building a narrative that could withstand both scrutiny and sabotage. The night before the hearing, he received a message slid under his door. No envelope, just folded paper, a single sentence written neatly. "You can still choose how this ends." Stone stared at it for a long moment, then tore it in half and dropped it in the trash. The hearing room was packed the next morning. Cameras banned, but reporters waiting outside. The men subpoenaed arrived with lawyers and practiced expressions, confidence tempered by calculation. Stone testified calmly, methodically, laying out connections without embellishment, resisting the urge to argue when challenged, letting the facts accumulate like weight on a scale. Jack Doyle testified again, steadier this time, age lending authority rather than weakness. When it was over, the room buzzed with restrained tension, no immediate resolutions, but something had shifted afterward as Stone exited through a side door. A woman approached him, older, elegant, eyes sharp. "You don't know me," she said. "But my husband's name was on your tapes." Stone nodded, bracing. "He died years ago," she continued. "Took his secrets with him, I thought." She paused. "I was wrong." Stone waited. "I kept his journals," she said quietly. "I never knew what to do with them." Stone felt a jolt. "And now?" he asked. She met his gaze, resolve firm. "Now I'm tired of carrying someone else's sins." She handed him a key and an address, then walked away before he could respond. The journals were real, detailed, corroborating the tapes with dates, amounts, names, the kind of evidence prosecutors dreamed about. Stone delivered them personally to the DA, watching the man's expression shift from caution to grim acceptance. "This changes things," the DA said. Stone nodded. "It always does." But change provoked response. Within hours, the media narrative pivoted again. Some outlets pushing the story hard, others hedging, sponsors pulling ads, editors weighing risk, the city fracturing along familiar lines. That night, as Stone left the building, the impeccably dressed older man from before appeared again, this time under brighter lights. "You're relentless," the man said. Stone shrugged. "You're predictable," the man smiled thinly. "You think this ends with indictments," he said. "It ends with vacancies filled by men who learn better." Stone held his gaze. "Then it ends better than it started." The man's smile faded. "Dead or alive," he said softly. Stone shook his head. "Exposed," he replied, and walked away. The next day, indictments were announced, cautious, limited, but real. The city reacted with a mixture of relief and cynicism. Stone felt neither, just a steady resolve, because he knew this was a beginning disguised as an ending. Retaliation came not with bullets, but with bureaucracy, motions filed, delays sought, witnesses intimidated subtly. Stone countered by documenting everything, by keeping allies informed, by refusing to be isolated. Heller found his footing again, confidence returning as action replaced uncertainty. "We're not done," Heller said one evening. Stone nodded. "We never are." They drove through the city as night settled, lights reflecting off wet streets, a beauty that felt earned now, not deceptive. Stone thought of the uniformed officer in the alley, of Eddie Rourke's laugh, of Maria's new life, of the journals and the tapes, of the city learning, slowly, painfully, to live with its own reflection. The phrase dead or alive echoed less often now, losing its grip as exposure changed the calculus. Survival wasn't just about breathing anymore, it was about being seen. And as Stone parked and cut the engine, he allowed himself a rare moment of stillness, knowing the next phase would be harder, messier, and more personal, because once power was wounded, it didn't retreat quietly, it tried to take something with it. The indictments did not bring relief so much as they brought motion, a grinding, deliberate turning of gears that had been idle too long. And Mike Stone felt the city lean into that motion with a mixture of hunger and fear. Because San Francisco had always been good at beginnings and terrible at consequences. And consequences were finally arriving with paperwork, subpoenas, and the slow erosion of certainty for men who had built their lives on the assumption that time itself was an accomplice. Stone spent his days moving between offices and hallways that smelled faintly of disinfectant and old ambition, watching careers fracture in small, almost polite ways, a resignation here, a medical leave there, explanations offered with just enough plausibility to let supporters keep their dignity. And yet beneath it all there was a tension that refused to settle, because exposure did not erase power. It taught it to hide differently. Heller noticed it too, the sudden reassignment of officers who had been helpful, the quiet promotion of those who had not asked questions, the way files took longer to surface and memos arrived already stripped of anything sharp. "They're adapting," Heller said one afternoon, voice low as they walked past a cluster of detectives who fell silent at their approach. Stone nodded. "They always do." Adaptation was survival, and survival was the one skill corruption mastered early. The trial dates were set, then nudged, then set again. Stone watched defense. Attorneys practice outrage in front of cameras while negotiating in whispers behind closed doors. The journals had shifted the balance, but not decisively, because balance implied fairness, and this was still about leverage, about what could be proven beyond doubt and what could be exhausted into irrelevance. The uniformed officer's death in the Tenderloin lingered like a bruise the city refused to examine closely, ruled unsolved. Momentum lost to paperwork and competing priorities. Stone refused to let it go, digging into old assignments, noticing patterns others dismissed as coincidence. Men reassigned just before scandals, witnesses who relocated suddenly, overtime logs that didn't add up. Heller helped tireless, learning to read between lines the way Stone did, learning that answers were often found in margins and omissions rather than statements. Late one night, as rain tapped insistently against the precinct windows, Stone received a call from the retired judge again. Voice urgent. "They're pushing a deal," he said. "Limited admissions, reduced sentences. They want this closed before it teaches the wrong lesson." Stone closed his eyes, feeling the familiar anger rise. "What's the wrong lesson?" he asked, though he already knew. "That accountability is contagious," the judge replied. Stone understood. If too many people believed exposure worked, the entire architecture of quiet compromise would collapse, and that was unacceptable to those who benefited from it. The next morning, Stone was summoned to a meeting with the district attorney, the room arranged carefully, seating neutral, body language rehearsed. "We have to be realistic," the DA said, hands folded. "Juries are unpredictable, memories fade. These events are decades old." Stone listened, jaw tight. "So is justice," he replied. The DA sighed. "We can secure convictions," he said. "Not all, but some." Stone met his gaze. "And the rest?" he asked. The DA hesitated. "We move forward," Stone understood the translation. Move on. Declare victory before it demanded too much. Stone left the meeting knowing the battle had shifted again. No longer about uncovering truth, but about how much of it the system could tolerate without convulsing. That afternoon, a familiar figure appeared at his desk, the impeccably dressed older man, no longer bothering with shadows. "You're being outpaced," the man said calmly. Stone didn't look up. "I'm being delayed," he replied. "Delay is a form of defeat." The man said. Stone finally met his eyes. "Only if you're in a hurry." The man smiled thinly. "People are," he said. "They're tired." Stone nodded. "So am I." The man leaned closer, lowering his voice. "You've done enough," he said. "You've made your point. Let others clean up the mess." Stone shook his head. "I don't make points," he said. "I finish things." The man straightened, disappointment flickering briefly before calculation returned. "Then understand this," he said. "The next pressure won't be symbolic." He turned and walked away, leaving Stone with the certainty that something personal was coming. That certainty proved accurate when Heller received a call from his sister, shaken, a warning delivered politely by men who smiled too easily. Stone felt the line tighten. Families were leverage, always had been. "We escalate," Heller said, anger sharp in his voice. Stone nodded, carefully. Escalation without control was surrender. They moved Heller's family temporarily, used favors owed and trust earned, the kind of protection that didn't appear on budgets. Stone knew it wasn't sustainable. Nothing built on quiet favors ever was. The trials began amid public fatigue and private fury, opening statements careful, evidence presented with restraint. Stone watched from the gallery when he could, noting jurors' faces, the way attention drifted when dates grew distant, the defense strategy clear. Bury the truth under time. suggest inevitability, argue that history had already rendered judgment by allowing these men to live unchallenged for so long. Stone countered where he could, advising prosecutors, guiding witnesses, reminding them that clarity mattered more than passion, that outrage was loud but precision endured. Midway through the proceedings, a juror was dismissed after receiving an anonymous letter detailing his financial troubles, coincidence officially, intimidation unofficially. The judge admonished the court, proceedings continued, but the damage was done, doubt seeped in. Late one evening, Stone returned to his apartment to find it intact but altered again, a single object placed on his kitchen table, Jack Doyle's old badge, cleaned, polished, unmistakable. Stone stared at it, understanding immediately Doyle was being used as a message, not harmed, but displayed, a reminder of vulnerability. Stone drove to the federal facility without waiting for clearance. Finding Doyle shaken but unharmed, guards confused, logs clean. They wanted me to know they could reach me, Doyle said, voice tired. Stone nodded. They wanted me to know too. Doyle looked at him steadily. Then don't let them turn me into an excuse, he said. Don't trade the truth for my comfort. Stone felt the weight of that trust, heavy and humbling. I won't, he said, and meant it. The next day, Stone took a risk. He authorized the release of additional corroborating material to the press, documents that had been deemed peripheral, financial records, that traced influence rather than direct payments. It was messy, harder to digest, but it expanded the narrative beyond individuals to systems. The backlash was immediate, accusations of misconduct, of bias, of vigilante justice. Internal Affairs reopened its inquiry, this time with vigor. Stone welcomed it, knowing scrutiny cut both ways. The city reacted unevenly, some outraged, some relieved, many simply numb, but numbness was not the same as apathy. It was often the prelude to change. Heller watched the fallout with a mix of pride and anxiety. You're burning bridges, he said quietly. Stone shrugged. Bridges that only lead back. The trials reached their midpoint, verdicts uncertain, plea deals whispered about. Stone prepared himself for compromise masquerading as resolution. And yet something unexpected happened. A mid-level executive turned state's witness, fear outweighing loyalty, testimony raw, imperfect, but corroborated. It shifted the room. Jurors leaned forward. Again, the defense recalibrated. Stone felt a cautious lift. Not hope exactly, but possibility. That night, the older man appeared once more, this time in the open, outside the courthouse, cameras nearby. You're enjoying this, he said. Stone shook his head. I'm enduring it. The man studied him. Dead or alive, he said, almost wistfully. Those were simple terms. Stone met his gaze. They were lazy terms. He replied, Truth doesn't fit binaries. The man smiled sadly. Neither does power, he said, and walked away. Days later, the first verdict came down. Guilty on several counts. Not the worst, not the best, but real. Applause erupted outside the courthouse, contained but unmistakable. Stone watched from a distance, feeling neither triumph nor relief, only a quiet acknowledgement that something had shifted irreversibly. The city would absorb it, reinterpret it, move on in its uneven way. But it would not be the same. Not entirely. Retaliation followed quickly, a formal notice, placing Stone on administrative leave pending investigation. No badge, no gun, no access, the official language clinical, impartial, the message clear, step aside. Stone accepted it without protest, knowing resistance would only validate their narrative. Heller protested anyway, voice sharp. This is punishment. Stone placed a hand on his shoulder. It's insulation, he said. They're protecting the process from me. Heller shook his head. You're the process, Stone smiled faintly. Not anymore. As he left the precinct, the city greeted him without ceremony, fog lifting, sunlight filtering through in pale sheets. He walked, unarmed, unmarked, just another man moving through streets layered with history. And for the first time since the case began, Stone felt the strange freedom of being outside the machine, watching it struggle with what it had swallowed. His phone buzzed. A message from Maria, brief, hopeful. A photograph of a small garden, new roots taking hold. Stone slipped the phone away, heart steady. The game was not over, but the rules had changed. Dead or alive no longer defined the outcome. Visibility did, and visibility had a momentum of its own. As Stone turned a corner and disappeared into the flow of the city, he knew the final chapters would not belong solely to courts or cops, but to memory, to who controlled it, who honored it, and who finally accepted that the past, once spoken aloud, never truly went back to sleep. By the time dawn crept over the eastern hills and poured a pale, almost apologetic light into the streets of San Francisco, the city seemed to be holding its breath. as if it sensed that something unfinished was still moving through its veins, and Stone felt it too as he stood on the balcony outside his office. The bay air cool against his face, cigarette unlit between his fingers, watching the fog pull itself apart in long, lazy strands. Because the case had reached that dangerous point where facts had been gathered, suspects had been prodded, lies had been peeled back layer by layer, yet the core of it all remained stubbornly intact, a hard knot of intention and fear that refused to loosen, and he knew from long experience that this was the moment when men made mistakes, when they talked too much or moved too fast, when they believed they were either dead or alive and acted accordingly, and Heller, pacing behind him with a cup of burnt coffee in his hand, was clearly feeling the same tension even if he masked it with restless energy and a running commentary about the city waking up, about cable cars clanging like stubborn old men clearing their throats, about the smell of bread from a bakery down the block, anything to avoid saying what they were both thinking, that the man they were hunting had not only planned his moves carefully, but had also studied them in return, had learned their rhythms, their habits, the way Stone trusted his instincts and the way Heller trusted motion, and that meant the next step would not come from a police report or a lab result, but from a human weakness, a crack in the armor of someone who believed himself untouchable, and that someone Stone suspected was closer than the department wanted to admit, perhaps even closer than was comfortable to say out loud, because the pattern of the murders, the staged brutality softened just enough to slip past immediate suspicion, suggested not rage, but control, not impulse, but rehearsal, as if each act had been a performance designed for a very specific audience. And when Stone finally turned from the railing and met Heller's eyes, he didn't need to explain any of this. He just said that they were going to visit Mallory again. Not the Mallory from the official files, the nervous accountant with the clean shoes and the immaculate alibi, but the Mallory who had once lived in the Tenderloin and had learned early that survival depended on knowing when to disappear. Because Stone had dug into old property records and found a name that kept resurfacing near every dead end they'd hit, a shell company here, a short-term lease there, always legal, always just far enough removed to seem coincidental, and that name, buried in the margins like a whispered confession, belonged to Mallory's older brother, presumed dead in Vietnam, officially declared killed in action in 1969, but never conclusively identified, a body burned beyond recognition, a family notified and compensated, a life closed on paper while something else perhaps continued elsewhere, and Heller's expression shifted at that, the easy grin flattening into something more serious, because the idea of a man officially dead but very much alive fit too neatly with the mood of the case, with the way the killer had played with boundaries, with the way victims had been left in places that suggested both defiance and invitation, as if daring the police to prove which side of the line they were standing on. And so they drove, the city sliding past in shades of gray and early gold, to a modest building south of Market where Mallory kept his office. And this time Stone did not knock politely or ask for coffee. He walked in with the quiet authority of a man who already knew the answer and was merely offering the other party a chance to catch up, and Mallory, who had rehearsed his calm so carefully before, cracked almost immediately, his eyes flicking toward the back room where a radio played too loudly, his fingers worrying the edge of his desk, his voice a half-octave higher as he insisted that he had told them everything he knew, that his brother was dead, that the war had taken enough from him already, and Stone let him talk, let him spiral just enough to expose the shape of his fear, because fear was more honest than anger. And when Stone finally mentioned the shell companies, the leases, the signatures that matched a hand Mallory claimed he had never seen, the accountant sagged, not in relief but in resignation, as if the weight he'd been carrying had finally been named, and he said that his brother had come back different, not broken in the way movies like to show, but sharpened, emptied of unnecessary parts, obsessed with balance and debt, with the idea that certain lives were provisional until properly justified, and that he had asked Mallory for help, just paperwork, just favors, nothing illegal on the surface, and Mallory, who had spent his life hiding behind numbers, had told himself that this was not blood on his hands, just ink, just forms, just another way to survive. And as he spoke, Heller moved quietly to the back room, following a sound that did not belong to a radio, and when he emerged moments later with a photograph in his hand, a photograph of two boys standing on a pier decades earlier, one already serious, already watching the world like a puzzle to be solved, the other smiling nervously, Stone knew they were closer than they had ever been, because the killer had left behind not just bodies but artifacts, pieces of a personal history that demanded recognition, and the rest of the day unfolded with a sense of acceleration, warrants signed, phones ringing, officers moving with purpose, and yet beneath it all Stone felt a strange calm, the kind that came when chaos had finally arranged itself into a comprehensible pattern, because the brother, alive or dead, was no longer a ghost. He was a man with habits, with memories, with an attachment to this city that went beyond opportunity. And as evening approached, bringing with it the familiar glow of streetlights and the hum of traffic like a restless heartbeat, Stone and Heller found themselves walking the waterfront, following a lead that had nothing to do with logic and everything to do with intuition, because killers returned to places that made sense to them, places where the line between past and present blurred just enough to be comforting. And when they reached the pier from the photograph, now older, more worn, its wood scarred by time and weather, Stone felt it again, that tightening in his chest, the sense of being watched, of being evaluated, and he knew that whether the brother was dead or alive in the legal sense no longer mattered, because the man who had orchestrated the violence of the past weeks was very much alive in intention, in planning, in the quiet confidence that he could still control the ending, and as darkness settled fully and the city's reflection fractured across the water, Stone realized that the next encounter would not be on their terms or even the killers, but on the city's, because San Francisco had a way of forcing truth into the open, of making men choose between surrender and exposure. And as Heller broke the silence with a low, almost hopeful comment about how close they were, Stone did not answer. He simply watched the shadows lengthen and thought about all the ways a man could be declared dead and still walk the streets, and all the ways the living could disappear without a trace. And he knew, with a certainty that felt almost like peace, that the case was no longer about catching a criminal, but about confronting a mirror, about deciding what it meant to be alive when so much of the world insisted on pretending otherwise. Night pressed down on San Francisco with a deliberate weight, the kind that turned familiar streets into corridors of uncertainty, and Stone felt it settle into his bones as he and Heller remained near the pier long after most of the city had moved on to dinners, arguments, late movies, and quiet betrayals that never made the papers, because the case had crossed into that intimate territory where the hunter could feel the breath of the hunted without yet seeing his face, and the water below the pier moved slowly, slapping against the pilings like a patient metronome marking time for something inevitable, while Stone's mind kept circling back to the idea of a man erased on paper but preserved in will, a man who had learned in war that survival was less about strength than about narrative, about who got to say when a life ended and under what circumstances, and Heller, leaning against a railing with his jacket collar turned up, broke the silence by noting that the brother would choose a place like this not because it was dramatic, but because it was honest, because piers were about departures and arrivals, about things leaving and things returning, and Stone nodded, appreciating the insight without commenting, because he was busy cataloging the details around them, the uneven boards, the scattered beer bottles, the smell of fish and oil, the distant sound of a foghorn that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once, all of it feeding into an instinct that told him this was not just a waypoint, but a staging ground, a place where the killer might test his control one last time before deciding whether to vanish again or step fully into the light. And when they finally left the pier and drove back toward the station, the radio crackling with unrelated calls that felt strangely irrelevant, Stone found himself thinking about Mallory's confession, about the quiet desperation in his voice, and about how often people told themselves that passivity was neutrality, that signing a form or renting a space was not the same as pulling a trigger. And he knew that if they survived the next phase of this case, that distinction would haunt more than one career, because the brothers' crimes were not isolated acts of madness, but the logical conclusion of a network of small, cowardly permissions. And by the time they reached the station, the night shift was in full motion, detectives hunched over desks, uniforms moving with tired efficiency, the building humming like an old engine that refused to stall, and Stone headed straight for the records room, ignoring the looks from younger officers who still believed answers lived in files rather than in patterns, because he wanted to see the Vietnam casualty report again, not as a death notice, but as a story constructed for convenience. And as he spread the yellowed pages across a metal table, he noticed what he had missed before, a discrepancy in dates, a transfer log 2 weeks after the supposed death, a clerical error perhaps, or perhaps a man slipping sideways through the cracks of a bureaucracy overwhelmed by bodies and eager for closure, and Heller, peering over his shoulder, let out a low whistle that carried more respect than surprise, because this was the kind of detail that turned ghosts into suspects, and they worked through the early hours, cross-referencing military records with immigration files, shipping manifests, and the shell company's Mallory had named slowly assembling a timeline that suggested the brother had returned not as a hero or a victim, but as a private citizen of nowhere, drifting through ports, jobs, and identities until he found in San Francisco the perfect balance of anonymity and meaning, a city that tolerated reinvention as long as it was done quietly. And sometime near dawn a call came in from patrol about a body found in an alley off Mission, staged but incomplete, as if interrupted, and Stone felt the now familiar tightening in his chest. Because escalation always meant proximity, and when they arrived at the scene the light was just beginning to creep back into the sky, painting the buildings in muted pastels that clashed obscenely with the reality on the ground, and the victim, still alive but barely, had been arranged with a precision that spoke of ritual, but something had gone wrong, a sound, a witness, a moment of hesitation, and as paramedics worked frantically, Stone knelt beside the man and caught fragments of a whisper. About a voice that sounded calm, almost kind, about being told that this was not punishment but accounting, that debts were being settled so the city could breathe again, and those words lingered with Stone long after the ambulance doors closed, because they revealed the brother's self-image more clearly than any manifesto could, a man who saw himself not as a killer but as an auditor of human worth. And back at the station the pressure intensified, the brass demanding results, the mayor's office asking for reassurance, the press sniffing blood, and Stone found himself navigating not just the streets but the politics of fear, choosing carefully what to reveal and what to hold back, because panic was its own kind of accomplice, and somewhere in that chaos a young officer brought him a thin folder recovered from one of the shell company offices, a folder that contained nothing but a hand-drawn map of the city with certain locations circled, all of them places tied to loss, closures, departures, and one final circle at the top of the hill overlooking the bay. A place known locally as a quiet overlook where lovers parked and old men watched the ships come in, and Stone felt a chill that had nothing to do with the morning air, because the map was not a plan but a statement, a declaration that the brother intended to finish where he could see everything at once, and when Stone showed it to Heller, the younger man's jaw tightened, the humor draining from his eyes as he realized. They were no longer reacting but racing, because the killer had moved beyond provocation into conclusion, and the drive up the hill felt longer than it should have, every red light an insult, every pedestrian an obstacle, and when they finally reached the overlook it was empty except for a single parked car, its engine ticking softly as it cooled, and Stone approached cautiously, hand near his weapon, senses stretched thin, and inside the car he found a tape recorder, old-fashioned, deliberate, with a note taped to it bearing his name in careful block letters, and the message, when they played it back later in the controlled quiet of an interrogation room, was not a confession or a threat but a conversation, the brother's voice calm, educated, tinged with something like regret, speaking about the war, about how death there had been arbitrary and survival had felt like theft, about how coming home to a city that pretended violence was an aberration had been intolerable, and about how he had chosen his victims not because they were evil but because they represented indifference, men who had stepped aside, signed off, looked away, and allowed harm to propagate, and he spoke directly to Stone, acknowledging his reputation, his persistence, suggesting that they were not enemies but counterparts, both trying in their own ways to impose order on a chaotic system. And as the tape ended, Stone sat in silence, aware that this was the closest the brother would come to surrender, that the rest would play out in motion, not words, and true to form. Another call came in minutes later about a disturbance near the docks, a man matching the brother's description seen arguing with a longshoreman, and the chase that followed cut through the industrial heart of the city, past warehouses and cranes that loomed like prehistoric creatures, and Stone ran harder than he had in years, driven not by adrenaline but by a grim clarity, because this was no longer about stopping a killer but about preventing a philosophy from completing its proof. And when they finally cornered the brother on a narrow catwalk above the water, the city spread out behind him in a glittering accusation. He turned to face them, older than his years, eyes steady, and for a moment no one moved, the sound of waves below filling the space where words might have been, and Stone saw in that man not a monster but a conclusion, the end point of a series of decisions made by institutions and individuals alike. And as the brother spoke softly about being dead once already, about how the rest had been borrowed time, Stone understood that whatever happened next would ripple outward, shaping not just this case, but the way he himself would walk the streets afterward. And the standoff hung there, unresolved, like the city itself, balanced between fog and clarity, between night and morning, between dead and alive. The wind off the bay cut sharper on the catwalk, carrying with it the metallic tang of salt and rust. And Stone felt every year of his service press against him as he faced the man who had orchestrated so much quiet devastation. Because this was not the cinematic climax people imagined when they thought of police work. There were no shouted ultimatums or dramatic gestures. Just 3 men suspended above dark water, each measuring the cost of the next breath, and the brother's voice, when he spoke again, was calm enough to be unsettling, explaining that he had chosen this place because it forced honesty, because there was nowhere to hide from gravity or consequence. And Heller shifted slightly, his hand tight on his weapon, the tension in his shoulders betraying how badly he wanted this to end cleanly. But Stone raised a subtle hand, not out of sympathy for the man across from them, but out of respect for the moment, because words still mattered here, and the brother talked about Vietnam not as a sequence of battles, but as an education, a brutal apprenticeship in the arithmetic of survival, where lives were tallied quickly and written off just as fast, and how returning home had felt like stepping into a lie, a place where people pretended that violence was an interruption rather than a foundation. And Stone listened, not because he agreed, but because understanding was a tool sharper than any gun. And he countered quietly that accounting without mercy was just another kind of chaos, that deciding who mattered based on personal grievance was no different from the indifference the brother claimed to despise. And for a moment the man hesitated, the first real crack Stone had seen, as if the argument had reached a place he had avoided, because acknowledging that would mean admitting that his careful structure was built on the same arbitrary ground as the war he could not escape. And below them a tugboat's horn sounded, low and mournful, and the city lights flickered as if the grid itself were holding its breath, and Heller took advantage of the pause to edge closer, his movement precise, disciplined, and the brother noticed, his eyes flicking toward the water, calculating distances, odds, endings, and Stone knew then that this was the fulcrum, the moment where philosophy would give way to instinct. And he spoke again, not as a detective, but as a man who had watched too many bodies roll into the morgue, telling the brother that being declared dead once did not give him ownership over death itself, that borrowed time could be repaid in more ways than blood. And the brother laughed softly at that, not mocking but tired, saying that Stone was still trying to save systems that did not want saving, that the city thrived on selective blindness, and that men like Mallory were proof enough of that. And at the mention of his brother's name something shifted again, guilt cutting through conviction, and in that instant Heller lunged, the motion sudden but controlled, and the struggle that followed was brief, violent, and messy, nothing like the clean lines of the brother's ideology. Bodies colliding against the railing, metal groaning, a shoe slipping on damp steel, and Stone grabbed for an arm just as the brother twisted free, the 3 of them teetering on the edge of balance. And for a split second Stone locked eyes with the man and saw not defiance but relief, as if the choice had finally been taken out of his hands. And then gravity asserted itself, the brother falling back hard against the railing, which held just long enough for Stone and Heller to pull him down, pinning him to the catwalk, breath knocked from his lungs, the fight draining out of him in a single, shuddering exhale. And the sound that followed was not triumph but sirens, distant at first, then closer, echoing through the industrial maze. And as backup arrived and the brother was cuffed, his wrists shaking not with fear but with exhaustion, Stone felt an unexpected hollowness, because catching him did not undo the damage already done, did not resurrect the dead or cleanse the city of its compromises. And later, back at the station, as the sun rose fully and poured light through grimy windows, the brother sat across from Stone in an interrogation room, subdued now, almost ordinary, answering questions with a candor that suggested he no longer cared how the story ended. And he admitted to everything without melodrama, laying out his logic with the precision of a ledger, each life a line item, each act a correction. And Stone took it all down, aware that this record would become the official version, the one that stripped away context and contradiction in favor of closure. And when it was done and the brother was led away, Stone found himself alone for a moment, staring at the blank wall, thinking about the thinness of the line between dead and alive, between action and inaction, between justice and justification. And Heller, dropping into the chair beside him, broke the silence with a quiet comment about needing a drink and a week of sleep. And Stone allowed himself a faint smile, because despite everything the city kept moving, kept demanding attention, And as the day wore on and the case began its slow transition from urgency to paperwork, from headlines to footnotes, Stone knew that this ending was not an answer but a pause. A reminder that San Francisco would always produce men who tried to impose order through violence and others who tried to stop them, and that the work lay not in believing the problem solved, but in staying present long enough to recognize the next one. And as he stepped outside into the full light of day, the fog retreating reluctantly toward the hills, he felt both older and strangely lighter, alive in a way that had nothing to do with survival and everything to do with choice. In the days that followed the arrest, San Francisco slipped back into its practiced rhythm with unsettling ease, as if the city itself had learned long ago how to absorb violence without altering its stride. And Stone noticed this most acutely during the quiet hours when the phones did not ring and the bullpen hummed with the low murmur of routine work, because that was when the weight of what had happened settled in, not as shock or triumph, but as a slow reckoning, and the brother, now officially alive again in the most inconvenient way possible, became a collection of transcripts, evidence tags, and psychiatric evaluations that tried and failed to capture the coherence of his internal logic. And Stone read through them all with the patience of a man who knew that understanding after the fact was a form of responsibility, even if it came too late to change outcomes. And Heller, who had thrown himself into new cases with characteristic speed, still found moments to circle back, dropping by Stone's office with offhand remarks that carried deeper unease about how close it had been, about the look in the man's eyes right before the fall, about how none of it fit neatly into the categories they used to stay sane. And Stone listened, offering no easy reassurances, because easy reassurances were a luxury the job did not afford. And outside the station the press cycle ran its course, headlines shifting from sensational to analytical to bored, the killer reframed as a symptom rather than an anomaly, his actions debated by columnists who had never smelled blood on cold pavement. And Mallory's name surfaced briefly, tarnished but not destroyed, his complicity reduced to a footnote that spoke volumes about how accountability thinned as it moved upward through respectable layers. And Stone attended the hearings with a quiet presence, watching lawyers argue intent and capacity, watching the brother sit motionless, eyes distant, as if already retreating into a private archive of memory where verdicts no longer mattered. And during one recess the man looked directly at Stone, not with hostility, but with a strange acknowledgement, a shared understanding that whatever judgment was passed would be inadequate to the complexity of what had unfolded. And that look stayed with Stone longer than any testimony, because it forced him to confront the uncomfortable truth that stopping someone was not the same as answering them. And evenings found Stone walking the city more than usual, tracing routes he had driven 1,000 times without seeing, noticing how each neighborhood carried its own unspoken contracts, its own tolerated blind spots, and he thought often of the victims, not as symbols of indifference, but as people whose small decisions had intersected disastrously with a man determined to impose meaning. And one night he found himself back at the overlook on the hill, the same place circled on the map, now occupied by a young couple arguing softly in a parked car, oblivious to the weight the location had recently carried. And Stone stood at the edge and looked out over the bay, the lights scattered like a broken constellation, and he felt neither closure nor despair, but something closer to acceptance, the understanding that the work was less about erasing darkness than about refusing to let it define the whole picture. And back at home he slept deeply for the first time in weeks, dreaming not of the chase or the standoff but of the city itself, breathing, shifting, alive in its contradictions. And when he returned to work the next morning a new case file waited on his desk, thinner, less dramatic, but no less human, and Heller appeared with 2 cups of coffee and a grin that suggested resilience was as much a habit as cynicism. And Stone took the cup, feeling the warmth seep into his hands, and thought about how being alive was not a permanent state, but a series of decisions renewed daily. And as the department moved on, as it always did, he carried with him the quiet knowledge that some cases never truly ended. They simply folded themselves into the larger story of a city that was forever balancing on the line between dead and alive. The case officially closed on a gray morning that felt deliberately unremarkable, the kind of day San Francisco specialized in when it wanted to remind you that significance was usually a private arrangement rather than a public announcement. And Stone signed the final report with the same pen he had used 1,000 times before, aware of how absurd it was that so much blood, fear, and moral friction could be reduced to neat paragraphs and checked boxes, yet also aware that this reduction was necessary because cities functioned on the illusion that things could be finished, and when he handed the file over to records and walked back to his office, he felt no rush of relief, only a steady, grounded sense of continuation, as if the case had not ended, but had simply taken its place among the many others that shaped the way he saw the world. And Heller, leaning in the doorway with that familiar half-grin, commented that it felt strange not to be chasing anything, not to be waiting for the phone to ring with another escalation, and Stone replied that the quiet was temporary, that it always was, because the city never stopped producing stories, it merely staggered their arrivals, and over the following weeks the brother faded from public consciousness, transferred to a facility where his theories would be studied, debated, and eventually diluted into academic language that stripped them of urgency, and Mallory retreated into a life of cautious obscurity, his name lingering, just long enough to serve as a warning before being replaced by the next convenient example. And the victims became memories held mostly by those who had loved them, their stories flattening with time not because they were unimportant, but because memory was selective by necessity. And Stone found that this knowledge no longer angered him the way it once had. It simply clarified his role, which was not to preserve meaning forever, but to intervene at moments when its distortion became lethal. And one afternoon he received a short note forwarded from the institution, written in careful handwriting, and signed but unmistakable, thanking him not for mercy, but for resistance, for refusing to accept a simplified ending, and Stone read it once, then placed it in a drawer he rarely opened, not as a trophy, but as a reminder that engagement itself had value even when resolution did not. And life resumed its familiar texture, cases layered over cases, days distinguished less by drama than by endurance. And yet something had shifted subtly, a recalibration of perspective that made Stone more attentive to small hesitations, to paperwork that lingered too long, to silences that suggested avoidance rather than ignorance. And he found himself mentoring younger detectives with a patience he had not always possessed, emphasizing not just procedure but responsibility, the idea that every choice, however minor it seemed, contributed to a larger moral ecosystem, and Heller, maturing in his own way, began to temper his speed with reflection, his humor acquiring an edge of consideration that suggested he too had absorbed the lesson of proximity, and occasionally they would pass the pier or the overlook without comment, shared history requiring no annotation. And on one such evening, as the fog rolled in thick and theatrical, Stone stood alone near the water and watched the lights blur into something softer, less accusatory, and he thought about how the brother had once described borrowed time, how survival could feel like an unresolved debt, and Stone realized that perhaps the truest counterargument was not punishment or even justice but presence, the act of staying engaged with a world that resisted tidy explanations. And as he turned away and headed back toward the noise and motion of the city, he felt grounded in that understanding, aware that being alive was not defined by the absence of death, but by the willingness to keep choosing connection over withdrawal, responsibility over detachment. And the streets of San Francisco stretched out before him as they always had, complex, compromised, resilient, and undeniably alive, and Stone walked them with the quiet certainty that while cases would come and go, this ongoing negotiation between order and chaos, between indifference and accountability, was the real work, one that never truly closed but instead renewed itself every day a man chose to show up and see clearly.